the UK is to slash overseas aid in budget as asylum seeker costs rise. We're going to read into this more from the Financial Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And this is Reganelite here with an article from the Financial Times with the headline that the UK is to slash overseas aid in budget as asylum seeker costs rise. The International Development Organisation warns countries' contributions could slump to its lowest in 17 years. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. Now, this is really, really bad. This is very, very bad. From Britain's point of view, this is bad from a globally point of view, an economic point of view. This is bad from a relationship point of view as well on many things. Well, why is it such a bad thing, Regan? Instead of us giving money to other countries and other nations, well, shouldn't that money be going towards British people? Where do you think immigrants, immigration, people who leave these countries and come to the UK, where do you think they come from? They come from nations that are war-torn, whether they have destitution, poverty, that have literally nothing, where they have corruption, economies that are literally nothing in comparison to ours. You have no idea what it is like for these people. I have no idea what it is like for some of these people to live the kind of life where we are very fortunate to have the lives that we have here in the UK or in some places where we are very well off. Some of these people have literally nothing in their lives, and are forced to leave because of certain circumstances beyond their control. There's a term that I like to use, circumstances beyond their control. So, like, for example, let's talk. I'll give you some example. Let's talk about Sudan, for example. Yeah, Sudan, country in civil war right now. There's been reports of up to more than 10 million people are starving within the civil war that's taking place in there. Millions of people forced to flee to their neighbouring countries. Some forced to flee to Egypt because some of the other nations on the continent are not deemed safe for them. So some of them flee to Egypt. Some of them obviously choose to go from Egypt to Europe to have better quality of life or have a better prospects for themselves and for their children. Because that is the human within people, is that when you have somebody, especially if you're somebody who has children, you always want what's best for your children. You want to give your children the best opportunities in life. Now, this aid goes towards helping these countries who are struggling, nations that are struggling, that makes a difference to people's lives. When you see the stories in the past, right, and if you're ever somebody who watches Children in Need, for example, and you see the work that's being done when schools have been built in really rough countries, water wells made, farms, simple basic necessities that people have, it can make a massive difference to these people's lives. And guess what the benefits are when those kind of things are aided, and when that kind of money, that kind of foreign aid from the likes of UK and other nations, guess what that means? When you help these countries get on their feet, when you give them the means and the necessary needs to live a reasonable life in their country, it means that they don't need to leave where they are to come to you where you live. They don't need to come to your country. If this is true, this means this will open more migration to Europe, more migration to the UK, more migration coming to America. That's what it will do. It will open up more migration. So if you're someone who has a problem with migration, if you're somebody who wants less migration, if you have a problem with illegal migration, you should be up in arms about this decision, because this will increase migration globally. not just UK specific, not just Europe specific, but globally increase it, because we're no longer helping the nations that are struggling out there. We're leaving them more to their own fate. Teachers to their own, as some of you like to think. It's a very important point to highlight. Now, it is interesting that this is coming from the Financial Times, because the Financial Times is obviously a very reliable source. Now, we don't know if this is going to be the case at the budget at the time of this recording. May turn out to be, may not to be. But we have to stop slashing the overseas aid, because it really does make a difference to people's lives. And it actually contributes to the reduction of migration. So if you are someone who has a problem with migration, you cannot also say that you have a problem with it, that you are happy that this may be a future thing, because it means it leads to more migration coming to the UK. So it's a very important point to make. Also, let's just point out as well, this also gives us something that's very, very important that we need as well, which is called influence. Influence over governments, influence in governments, influence over some of these poorer nations. And when we are taking less influence, that means that someone else will take that influence as well. Something we have less of in the world since Brexit, by the way. So the UK Treasury is preparing to slash spending on overseas aid in the budget after refusing to match Tory-era top-ups to compensate for development and cash spent on asylum seekers in the country, said people familiar with the matter. So the decision comes despite warnings without an emergency cash injection, the UK international aid could slump to its lowest level in 17 years at just 0.36% of the gross national income and undermine the government's ambition on the global stage. The Financial Times first reported last month that UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy was pushing for additional money as a ballooning proportion of the development budget was being spent on housing asylum seekers in hotels. Jeremy Hunt, the former Conservative Chancellor, awarded an extra £2.5 billion to the aid budget in the past 2 years to partially offset the domestic expenditure. Official data showed that the government has spent £4.3 billion hosting asylum seekers and refugees in Britain in the last financial year, with more than a quarter of its $15.4 billion overall overseas aid budget. The government is expected to argue that a top-up is not needed because the Home Office is planning to bring down expenditure on asylum accommodation in Britain. People familiar with the situation are told the Financial Times. It has pledged to accelerate processing of asylum claims to bring down a huge backlog of people awaiting decisions on their cases and reduce the cost of housing them in hotels. But the backlog stands at nearly £120,000 according to official data. Andy Dodds, the UK Development Minister, gave a keynote speech at the Foreign Affairs think tank Chatham House last week, in which she highlighted asylum costs had spiralled in recent years, which the Home Secretary is now taking action to rectify. Her intervention came after the Treasury engaged in a tough round of negotiations with departments ahead of the budget on October the 30th, in which the Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she faced difficult decisions. In her July 29 speech, outlined the dire physical straits that the Labour inherited from the previous Conservative government. Reeves said the projected costs of the asylum system will rise to £6.4 billion this year. Labour is hoping to cut this by at least £800 million. Bond, the UK network for organisation working in international development, has predicted that without any extra cash, spending on overseas UK aid programs will slip to 0.6% of GNI this year, the lowest level since 2007. While former Tory Prime Minister David Cameron in 2016 set a global benchmark by ring-fencing the UK aid budget at 0.7% of GDI, it was later cut to 0.5% by Boris Johnson in 2021. It is within the OECD rules for donor countries to spend some aid because domestically on support for refugees and asylum seekers because it counts as humanitarian assistance. However, the UK far outstrips other OECD members in the amount of aid and spending in its way at home, according to Bond. Now, this is true, and this is a fair argument that people will make in the comments that we spend more on foreign aid than other countries. And I totally understand that premise, but you have to also remember is that by us cutting back, we have less influence in the world. You have to understand that, and you also have to understand that if nobody fills the gaps and the voids that we put in, it means that's going to be even more migration. So again, this opens the door for more migration globally as well if we're not helping these countries that need the aid and support they need. Gilligan Rabinis, Policy and Advocate Director at Bond, said, We're alarmed that overseas UK aid spending could hit a 17-year low if the government fails to act in the autumn budget. He urged the government to stop diverging UK funds to the UK's broken asylum system and refocus the development budget back on its intended purpose of tackling global poverty and crisis. Former Tory International Development Secretary Andrew Mitchell said it would be very worrying if the Treasury agreed no extra aid funding in the budget, claiming the estimate of expenditure from the Home Office has gone down. The Home Office has never managed to get its figures right, and there is no reason to believe the costs will go down, he said, warning that no additional cost of cash would mean a significant cut from Conservative levels to UK spending on international development overseas. A government spokesperson said government spending plans for 2024-2025 are part of the spending review and will be announced at the autumn budget. So, again, like I said, this is from the Financial Times. So we don't know that. We don't know this for sure until, obviously, the budget. And I will be covering the budget in full on Friday the 30th at 12 p.m. I'll be covering Prime Minister's questions and then the budget in full. So if you want to watch the budget with me, do subscribe to the channel and you can watch it along with me, and then we'll give our reactions as we watch it along. But just whether or not this is... So, obviously, they've not said yes and they've not said no. Obviously, the Financial Times would not be publishing this article, excuse me, if they did not have reliable sources on this. So this is obviously very concerning, to say the least. Less influence in the world, less help for nations out there, for poorer nations out there in the world. More migration globally as a result. And this is wrong on so many levels. We should be leaving it. We should be ring fencing UK aid as it already is. Slashing overseas aid will not make things better. We should leave it as it is. We are a big contributor and we are very generous country. And I understand again why people think we give too much. But I generally do believe too many people are being influenced by medias out there on this situation. We're supposed to be leading an example. Talk about world leading. That's kind of the premises, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? And we're supposed to be one of the world leading when it comes to foreign aid. And now we want to be less leading in that example as well. Less and less about the world and more about ourselves. Really shows what kind of a caring country we are when people think that it's a good thing that we're cutting overseas aid budget, while also barking about immigration, but they're happy for more immigration to come if it means cutting the UK aid budget. So, you can't have it both ways, people. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of the UK potentially, according to the Financial Times, cutting the overseas aid budget as asylum seekers' costs rise? That's potentially what may not happen at the budget, but this is what the Financial Times are claiming. Let me know your thoughts and more on this story down in the comment section below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. Greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further and support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.